Hello, I'm Dave Goodall, Chief Technology Officer at ZDS. In this video I'm going to cover step by step how to get Deploy Metrics installed and configured, tuned and integrated into your organization. The Getting Started with Deploy Metrics document in the Distribution Docs directory has a hard copy of the slides I'm going to present. Now let's get started on installing and configuring Deploy Metrics. First we're going to install the distribution. I suggest you'll find it more convenient to try Deploy Metrics out on a laptop first. You'll need a reasonable amount of disk space, but any current laptop should be powerful enough to handle the processing load. Just copy the PPM Deploy Metrics directory from the flash drive to the laptop. If you place it somewhere else than the default location, edit the DPL Metrics and E-configuration file to specify where you want the output reports written. Open the DPL Metrics file with Notepad. Locate the default fully qualified output directory path in the program section and change it to the directory where you want to place the output reports. That's it for installation. Deploy Metrics is standalone and it doesn't use the registry. Next, I'd like you to do a quick check to make sure everything arrives safely. Open the command window and run the GoSamples batch file in the PPM Deploy Metrics directory. You should see output displayed on the screen as the program processes the sample data. Do a dir in the report output directory. If you see 4 HTML files with today's date, you're in good shape. The logs and packages file contain tuning information we're going to need later. The reports file contains the analysis the programs generated. And the type file contains the time-lapse animation of your migrations. Deploy Metrics needs to know your custom object names and the version control system you're using. Run the supplied SQL and plug the names listed into the custom error objects section in the DPL Metrics INI file. Then change the version control entry in the custom error type section to the name of your version control system. Lastly, you need to give Deploy Metrics some of your own logs to work with. To get started, you need to get the PPM operations group to copy the PPM home/log/pkg_ whatever number directory tree from the PPM production application server to a server outside the firewall that you have access to. For example, you could use the PPM development application server to put them on. A bit later in this presentation, I'll be discussing more permanent arrangements for making the logs available. I suggest you FTP the logs down to the laptop into a peer directory to the samples directory. You might call it prod_logs_ the date to make it clear how current they are. You can copy the GoSamples batch file that you used to check out the distribution and use this new one to run the application. Change the path parameter to point to the production logs directory. Change the date parameters to the range you want to cover, and then run the new batch file. Deploy Metrics will start up and you should see your first logs. Now let's move on to item 2, tuning Deploy Metrics. After Deploy Metrics completes its first run on your logs, it would have created a DPL Metrics logs HTML report, listing every line migration in the period you selected. Out of the box, Deploy Metrics comes ready to handle about 250 common migration errors. If it finds these, they'll be color-coded red. There are going to be migration errors that are unique to your organization. If it finds these, it'll color-code these orange. You need to train Deploy Metrics to recognize these unique errors. Use File Open to open DPL Metrics_logs.html in your browser. Look for orange color-coded entries. These are migrations that PPM has said have failed, with an error reason that Deploy Metrics doesn't have a ready-made definition for. You'll need to find an error string that characterizes the error and define this to Deploy Metrics. After you've done this, on the next run, the color coding of the entry will change from orange to red to indicate that PPM and Deploy Metrics both classify the migration as failed. Remember whether the orange line is for a custom or standard error, and click on the line to open the underlying log. Look through it until you find the point at which the migration failed. You want to locate a string which characterizes the failure. For example, error source file not found. To define the error to DPL Metrics, open the dplmetrics.ini file in Notepad and add an entry at the end of the preset definitions in either the custom error codes or standard error codes sections. The entry is quite simple. A sequence number, values with a 2-letter type code, a force code you can ignore for now, and then a string, each separated by vertical bars. When you're done adding definitions, update the section count and run Deploy Metrics again. When no more orange-coded entries show up in the DPL Metrics logs HTML report, tuning is complete. You can now open the DPL Metrics reports HTML file and review reports customized for your system. And now on to item 3, integrating Deploy Metrics into your organization. There's no one way to do this. How it's done depends on your unique setup, whether you're Windows or Unix server-based. In general though, even though Deploy Metrics is a read-only application, good security practice suggests that you should not run it directly against the logs tree on the production server. You'll need to get the logs moved outside the firewall periodically, and automating this procedure is likely to be your next step. You'll probably want to wait until you've developed and implemented an action plan to resolve the issues identified by Deploy Metrics and have your service levels tracking your targets before automating the distribution of reports to a wider audience. When you are ready for this, you'll find that the web orientation of Deploy Metrics makes it exceptionally easy to plug into your corporate management reporting systems. Now let's discuss making your logs available to Deploy Metrics. To get started, a simple copy of the logs tree, zip, TARD or FTP to a laptop where you can run Deploy Metrics on it is all you need. To get a regular supply of logs, a simple cron script will do the job. But let's not overlook the obvious. In PPM deployment, we have the ideal tool to transfer files between servers. A PPM deployment workflow with no more than 2 steps is adequate to make the necessary server-to-server connections and move the logs tree from the production application server to a server outside the firewall. A laptop is a good starting point to locate Deploy Metrics, and you may want to continue with this for local testing. At some point, you'll want to relocate the program to a Windows server and kick off an execution after the automated transfer of a fresh logs tree. Where you locate the Deploy Metrics program itself depends very much on your unique environment. This slide suggests alternatives depending on whether you're Unix or Windows server based. It's also up to you when and how widely you want to make Deploy Metrics reports available outside your group. The web orientation of Deploy Metrics makes this very easy to do. It outputs HTML pages which can be fed into any web server. Finally, we've included on the docs directory a Getting Started with Deploy Metrics document with hard copy of this presentation for reference. Thank you for watching.